welcome. I want to begin with our Indigenous Peoples Acknowledgement. As Crystal Bridges and the Momentary, we recognize our role as settlers and guests in the Northwest Arkansas region. We acknowledge the Caddo, Quapaw, and Osage, as well as the many Indigenous caretakers of this land and water. We appreciate the enduring influence of the vibrant, diverse, and contemporary cultures of Indigenous peoples. We are conscious of the role in colonization that museums have played. As cultural institutions, we have a responsibility to engage in the dismantling of historical and systemic invisibility of Indigenous peoples, past, present, and future. We choose to intentionally hold ourselves accountable to appropriate conversation, representation, connection, and education to facilitate a space of measurable change. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Bethany Collins to this group. Bethany is a multidisciplinary artist who was raised in Montgomery, Alabama, and lives and works in Chicago, Illinois. As you can well imagine, her works have been exhibited in solo and group exhibitions nationwide. And that includes the Studio Museum, the High Museum of Art, the Seattle Art Museum, the DePaul Art Museum, among many others. She's also received numerous awards and residencies for her work: the Artadia Award, the Ephraimson Contemporary Arts Fellowship, McCall Center for Art and Innovation Residency, and a fellowship at the MacDowell Colony. And I have to say, when we were looking at her recent exhibition history, it's really exciting to call out the number of exhibitions Bethany has been featured in or had solo this year alone. She's been included in University of Illinois Chicago's Galleries 400's Young, Gifted, and Black. She had a solo exhibition, Bethany Collins Evensong, at the Frist Art Museum. And she's been included in the Dirty South, Contemporary Art, Material Culture, and the Sonic Impulse, which of course will be at Crystal Bridges this spring. She was included in the Speed Art Museum show that our former Associate Curator Allison Glenn curated, Promise, Witness, Remembrance, reflecting on the life of Breonna Taylor. And then also another solo exhibition, Bethany Collins, My Destiny is in Your Hands, at the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts. And I also have to say that the reason that I know Bethany is because she was the artist we engaged and commissioned to first install a version of this sound installation, America Hymnal, for Jacob Lawrence, The American Struggle, at the PBD Essex Museum, which toured nationally. And so I think since about 2018, we've been in conversation about how your work connects to language, to American history, American culture, and the evolution of our democracy. So before we start in with some questions, we're going to just take a minute for you, a couple, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, for you just to listen and hear the layers of voices and lyrics, and then we'll talk about it. So hopefully you're getting a feel for the many layers of America, a hymnal. So Bethany, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're hearing, your idea for this project, and a little bit about the history of this specific hymn, My Country 'Tis of Thee.
Can you hear me okay? I feel like I'm in competition with my work, which is interesting, psychologically interesting. Um, so, one of the first works that I made after the 2016 presidential election was actually the hymnal version of this project. So, it is it's a kind of bound compilation of 100 versions of My Country 'Tis of Thee that are written from the 18th to 20th centuries. So, the melody for My Country 'Tis of Thee that we all know is actually also the melody for 6 other national anthems, other countries than ours. And then in 1831, the lyrical version of My Country 'Tis of Thee that we all sang, most of us in school, they don't do it anymore. That one's 1831. It's performed in Boston by a children's choir, first time. And then a little bit before that, and all the way into the 20th century, the song, just the lyrics, continue to be rewritten at least 100 times. And there is a way then that you can trace American history, all of it, or almost all of it, just by tracing the way in which the song is rewritten. So the lyrics are rewritten for revolution, national sovereignty, labor, suffrage versions. There are a lot of temperance and prohibitionist versions. You can tell what we were obsessed with as a nation by how many versions of a song there are. And those are also the worst. They're very melodramatic. It's like drink water to this lyric. I mean, to this melody, right? That's all it's saying. It's singing over and over again. And then also there are Confederate versions and abolitionist versions. And those are the ones that, when the song that we are singing that's supposed to tell us who we are and how we belong together is in direct opposition to itself or to ourselves, those are the moments I find most interesting. And so they all got bound together into one bright red hymnal. So they have to forever just abide one another in contradiction, not in peace. And then I burned the musical notes away. So the thing that's unifying them and making them feel like they still belong here, all in the same book, that's gone. This was after the 2016 election. And then I left the lyrics legible so that you could read the differences, not the unifying thing. It's absent. That was really satisfying. The other part of that work that feels like there's still threads to hear is that the more you read that book, the musical notes are actually burned away with a laser cutter. So these tiny shape notes are burned away. And so those tiny negative spaces start to tangle up. So as you flip through the book and read the pages, they start to cling to each other. I imagine works that are of the hymnal that are in institutions will be pristine in 50 years. Works that are in people's collections, my hope is that some of them are an utter mess, right? That they become a kind of representation of failure, and that both of those possibilities are true of democracy. Right? That we are on the we could be both of those things. They're equally possible. So the performance of after the hymnal came the performance. So I grew up in a Presbyterian church. You'll interrupt me if I'm talking too long. Okay. So I grew up in Alabama in a very progressive Presbyterian church in Montgomery, Alabama. And we used to do these 48-hour Bible readings. So you would sign up for your hour. Are you nodding because you've done this before? Maybe so, yes, okay. People still do this with the oh, yes, yes. So you'd sign up for your hour. Maybe it's like 3 p.m., maybe it's 3 a.m., and you would go and read from the pulpit, wherever the last person left off. Hopefully it's a good chapter and not like Job. And you would also hope that someone would come in an hour and relieve you from your post, from reading. Usually, no one was in the pew listening. But you were always aware during this marathon endurance reading of a sacred text that somewhere, even if no one was listening, that it was still being read back into the world. And that it was worthy of being read back into the world, even if no one was listening. And that felt like democracy, especially in that moment. The performance then kind of was a kind of the first one was in Miami that you came to, and I had an open call for singers. Anybody could come and sing for 30 minutes, so it was reflective of those Bible hour readings, marathon readings. There was one singer I always like to say who was terrible, and one of these singers reminds me of them. That singer at the time, they just weren't sonically pleasing. Is that the nice way to say that? Yeah. Yeah. And I think they did it on purpose, and it made me really uncomfortable in the moment. And then after, I was like, well, that's democracy too. Sometimes that stuff sounds really bad, and it's unpleasant. love Timmy. Um, Timmy sounds wonderful, but he also sings louder than everybody else. You can always hear Timmy, you know? And so there's all these ways that the work feels was a way for me to make sense of that moment when it felt like I didn't recognize my country, and my country surprised me in a really disappointing way. Oh, it feels like it's 2016 again. So then this piece came after. It's the last in that kind of lineage of the hymnal. My hope for this work is that if you're sitting in the center of this sacred space, that it sounds like chaos, but it also sounds familiar, right? That it's unfamiliar and disorienting and unsettling, but you also know it at the same time. And all of those ways felt like, oh, that's my country. Yeah. So
Well, I am very struck by the idea of the original inspiration for the piece connected to those marathon Bible readings with your choice. So, I want to acknowledge the role of Allison Glenn, who originally was in her work through the Speed Museum, thought to bring Bethany to Crystal Bridges, and the two of you had worked to select this site. And the idea that, it's not going to be generally ever populated with this many people. And that it is this more kind of casual, and these songs, these lyrics might be going out into this beautiful ether. Tell me about how you think of this site as a new expression of the work, or next phase of it, if you will?
yeah, so the first time we showed the piece was for the Peabody Essex Jacob Lawrence show, and it was installed in a. I tried to create my own chapel for that space, and so the speakers were installed along the ceiling, and if you walked under any one of them, a voice would become clear and legible. If you stood in the middle, familiar noise. And so I was hoping for that in this space too. But what's different about the space, it's hard to create your own chapel, but to make a space sacred, to like, can I elevate the space that already exists, is actually a really satisfying gesture that I think is yeah, it's a really satisfying gesture. The curve of that, there are a lot of like visual choices that we worked with the installation team on here.
Especially Ben Huss and the
Yeah.
team. Yeah.
So that, I mean, I just want to talk about formal things. That cedar plank that just bends and creates that kind of arc, it's no longer about standing under any one speaker. It feels like being surrounded by voices. I walked from the barbecue place today through the trail. So I stopped at the James Turrell piece and walked in that space and thought, oh, right. It's like really simple, and it's also sacred. He just made enough moves, just enough, that walking in that space is different than being outside of it. It's just yeah, it's sacred. That's my hope for this space as well.
And I think too the idea that you can sort of see the armature of this installation is visible but still blended in, and our Trails and Grounds crew like found this reclaimed cedar wood and painted the speakers and sort of installed them in the round this way. But you had this really beautiful way of talking about how the sound would flow beyond the non-walls. I don't know if you remember you said this, but it was on our first Zoom. But flowing beyond the non-walls just is a great quote. And I think that idea that you can, through a really solemn um, document, if you will, sonic document of American culture, could inhabit or create a kind of sacred space where there's both reverence, and maybe sort of doubt or confusion, and layering, I feel is a very potent aspect of your work. Could you tell us a little bit about the singers, how you chose these voices, if there's any specific connection to the lyrics that way?
They are as diverse as I could possibly find. So it is a plethora of singers. Also, professional to amateur, that kind of diverse as well. The singer that always makes my heart hurt a little bit is Madeline. It's like angel voice, that light voice. that she has to be next to or heard in conjunction with Keenan, who is an opera singer, operatic singer. It's it's an attempt to make it sound like America. Like there is no one voice that I want you to focus on except for Timmy, or Timmy wants you to focus on. Um, that you should hear all of them at the same time, and nobody is more important than Timmy. You know, yeah.
I think the blending obviously is very powerful, and you can detect different moments of lyrics and familiarity, and hear the different versions over time. I know that also in other work that you make, works on paper and other kinds of almost like three-dimensional kind of paper works, you're really dealing with language. And maybe you could connect a little bit of some other aspects of your practice with the ways in which the language of this hymn and all its versions resonates for you.
Yeah. Oh, we could talk about the Odyssey, which is like on par with this work in terms of making me happy. In 2017, Emily Wilson is the first woman to translate the Odyssey into English. First woman, right? Is that 400 years, 60 some translations. First woman in 2017. And in all of these interviews, keeps getting asked the question, oh, why do we need another translation of the Odyssey? With like that head gesture. And she says, did you ask the like 60, 59 people men who came before me that question? Or is it just mine? And she points to this first line of the Odyssey that's been translated 36 different ways. So this multiplicity of translation as a reason for her new work. And the word that's been translated 36 different ways, polytropos, where we're trying to get a sense of like, before we follow you on this really long journey home, Odysseus, who are you? Who is this man? And it has been translated to mean ingenious, conniving, cunning, mischievous, adventurous, a hero, positive and negative. It spans the gamut. And Emily Wilson finally translates the line to say, he was a complicated man. Yeah, it's a complicated place because in that one word, she embodies everything that came before. It is all those other things in one. For that, the works on paper, then I'm looking at Book 13. This feels really related to the America hymnal. Book 13, when Odysseus finally reaches his homeland, like 10 years at war, 10 years weeping on every wrong shoreline he leads his men down upon, until he's the only one who makes it back home, stands on the shoreline of his own country and looks out and does not recognize the place. It's like, oh, well, that felt like that moment too. That felt like that moment. And so I'm looking at translations from specifically Book 13 when he gets home, doesn't recognize, and the ways in which the time of the translator reveals the bias of the translator and also tells us about ourselves in that moment. So then in like 1852, the translation of the water it might be like a whispering surf line, the deaf rocks, the tumultuous deep-voiced waves, the booming shoreline. There is no agreement in that text, even just the water. We don't know if it's like whispering or if it's really, really loud talking to us. We don't know. But there are also translations where it's going to get loud, I think. It's a crescendo. So in 1852, the translation will be, what men are born here. In 2017, it's what people dwell here. And that comes from the same Greek. We are translating the same origin text. But there must be something about the way we think about citizenship in 1852, what men are born here, versus who are the people who live in this place? It's a different question. And allowing those works, then those translations to, forever exist side by side. No one is right. They both came before. They are both attempts to understand the original language and original intent. So they must forever just abide one another in contradiction. I also use those works, it's like rewriting the translations on this really large sheets of paper. It's a diptych. They're closely hung together, 4 to 6 inches, so they can't escape one another. And then I use my spit to erase the text, everything but those kind of opposing or differing translations, so that it's a way of editing to make you focus in. And I think this work is doing a really similar thing. No version is the version of what it has meant to be American. The really painful versions, the ones that feel horrible to me, the Confederate or even the KKK versions, they are as much of what it has meant to live in this place as the ones that I want to celebrate, which is like the suffrage versions, the ones that agree with my politics, the labor versions, and especially the abolitionist ones. That's the solo version that you heard before. There's a really beautiful stanza that I think makes clear the difference between the song we know and how it has shifted. My country, 'tis of thee. So, my country, 'tis of thee, stronghold of slavery, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died. I can't remember the rest. I'll leave you hanging. But even that shift from, my fathers, who are we talking about? And when you say my land, whose land is this? That claiming of this place over and over again by different people. All of that contradiction is what I wanted to reflect, and the confusion. Yeah.
As you're talking about these different texts, the Odyssey, America, My Country, 'Tis of Thee, I know you've also done a piece around the Star Spangled Banner. I'm interested actually in this idea that these texts in themselves are sacred. Their complicatedness, even though they have represented all of these different versions, they're like the Bible. They're like that Bible reading that you start with, because the Bible will never go away. The Odyssey's never going to go away. These songs will not go away. Not, and I'm not suggesting that they should, but the idea that they have a kind of like holiness within our history and our culture, that they continually have to be revisited and read over and over and over and reread and reinterpreted. And I think your work does that so beautifully. Do you want to talk about the Star Spangled Banner, or how this project is inspiring new work, are you continuing with more sound pieces?
Yeah. Can I say something about them being sacred too? I think there was an interview that Teju Cole did with Krista Tippett. Have I told you this? Have I told you? That Teju Cole did with Krista Tippett. It's that On Being podcast that I love, because it's like all different faiths. It's very Unitarian. And so it like toes that line between secular and sacred, which I think I'm often trying to also toe. But Teju Cole talks about leaving the credo, the beliefs of his childhood behind, but keeping the ritual. Because he feels like, and I agree, we all need a lot of help. Like, to be human is to need a lot of help. And where he thinks we can find that help is in the texts that have been boiled down to their most quintessential form. Like, it's already been done. That's, literature, the sacred and the spiritual text. But also he mentions Homer and the Odyssey, right? That no one text is like more sacred than the next, at least according to Cole. But I'll also say, I would agree with him. Like, I have also left behind the credo belief of my childhood, but I keep that sense of, like the psalm that you repeat to yourself in times of need, or in when you are weary, and when you need some sort of help. For me, it's the beginning of Emily Wilson's The Odyssey. That's what I repeat. So it's like, tell me about a complicated man, muse. Tell me how he wandered and was lost. Tell the old story for our modern times. Find the beginning. That becomes my kind of psalm that I hold. But the Star Spangled Banner did come after this work, since it is the official anthem. And I made a hymnal and then also a performative or an audio version for that piece for the Breonna Taylor exhibition at the Speed Museum. Different, very different than this work. Um, I had Elder Seals. Elder Anton Seals is a singer outside of Chicago. He is in. I don't want to lie on him on film. Maybe 70s, maybe 70s. Yes. And his voice has a weariness to it. So I had him sing and record 8 abolitionist versions of the Star Spangled Banner, and they played at the end of every hour in the museum. So both his voice, that kind of weariness of tone, and also the ending of the hour became a way to think about not presenting a kind of possibility for hope, but it's a way to mark the ending of things and a mourning, a way to mourn. Yeah. Next, I feel like it's gonna get loud again. Next is a work that I'm working out. So I invited all of these same singers, including one who only sings one song in this entire performance, back. She only sings one song because she actually never heard that tune when she was growing up. She's a bit younger than me. And so it's not familiar to her. And as many times as I played the melody for her, she couldn't connect it to the lyrics because it didn't have a kind of like it's a deer, childhood familiarity for her. Um, so she was singing some other tune. It was like a country version tune. I hope you catch it. It's very rare. What was I saying? Oh, so I invited all of these singers back to sing Auld Lang Syne for my show that's coming up in Chicago next year. You know, it's a song of like marking the new year, a song of progress, and a way to say, "Oh, we made it, and here we're like about to jump over into this newness." But the performance is actually going to focus on a World War I version. I think it's World War I, where the soldiers would sing, "We are here because we're here, because we're here. We are here because we're here," to the tune of Auld Lang Syne. And the style note at the top of the musical sheet just said, "Sing it until you're exhausted." So that repetition ad nauseum, that like those to the song that should progress us, and you're instead forever kept in this space. That'll be the next version. They hate this melody. It takes them about 4 hours to sing through 100 versions. They hate it by the end, which I love. And it also feels a little bit like this moment. It's like, can you hear me or are you hearing that? And there's like this sonic frustration that I hope you're also feeling in all the work and for the singers too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, we wanted to make sure that we give you all a time to ask questions of Bethany, and we can have a little bit more open discussion. We can listen a little bit more. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to talk about? Whether, this experience of the sighting, other work?
Not yet. Not that I can think of on the spot. Yeah.
Any questions, comments, reflections? I would love to pose a question to the audience as well of, what does this hymn, bring forth for you? If anybody wanted to share, is it something you routinely sang at Thanksgiving or patriotic holidays in church or in school or never sang? Does anybody want to share some connections to this musical history?
Did you sing this at church?
Yes.
Oh, really?
We would sing, we would often sing patriotic, My Country 'Tis of Thee or God Bless America, like especially at Thanksgiving.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
And, that kind of sequence around other kind of national holidays, basically.
Yeah. I mean, that intermingling of like faith and patriotism or
Yeah.
nationalism is
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up in the Episcopal Church and I have the hymnal, I play the piano, and there's a whole section on national hymns. And all of these are in there.
I wonder if it was in ours too, and we were just like, no, that's too complicated.
Too complicated.
Right?
Yeah, but it's like Thanksgiving and national holidays are like lined up together in the in the sequence of this hymnal from 1982. But so that's my version. I also wondered, I don't know if this is not like a correct interpretation, but one of the things with the actual bound hymnal version that I find really powerful about the ways in which the notes are lasered away, the melody is lasered away. For those like who may know the Bible or who may know this hymn, you have to actually work to hold that memory, or the memory or the profound familiarity of the tune is brought to the experience of kind of folding through and seeing all these and understanding all these different versions. And so, does the cultural memory, do you want people to kind of, in that experience of it, like have a memory of it, sort of as listening or as seeing the bound version?
Yes. I mean, the other thing is, like, Amazing Grace existed lyrically 60 years before it's actually like wed to a tune. A lot of our early songbooks are printed without musical notation. It's just lyrics. Sometimes it's with the assumption that like if we belong together, then you know this melody. Or it's to, you know, you know the melody, so I can change the lyrics for you. But it does assume some sort of cultural collective memory.
Right.
Which is interesting because we obviously don't, like, you're singing My Country 'Tis of Thee at Thanksgiving, and that seems very
Right.
foreign to me.
Yeah.
To sing something patriotic at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
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 There's a lot of assumptions in collective national identity, what it means to be American. But also something else about the notes is it does force you to think about the melody and whether you remember it or not. By burning it away, it means, well, now you have to remember or it's gone.
Right.
Right. The notes that were also in the form of shaped note hymnals, sacred harp singing. So this used to be, I think it's a colonial version of singing that's now mostly still popular in the American South. I grew up with a lot of shaped note singers or sacred harp singers. I can't remember which one, but typically white or black versions tend to call themselves either shaped note or sacred harp, and their hymnals were also different. But the unifying thing was that the notes were literally shapes. So they were squares and rectangles and circles, and it's thought to be a more egalitarian form of learning music, and being able to learn how to read music easier. I still can't read it. I went to a I'm not often in the woods.
Dear, not chipmunk.
Oh, I went to a shape note singing before I made the first hymnal. They remind me, thinking of James Turrell, of Quakers. It's not a religiously affiliated group, but they do often sing Christian music, and also secular music. But they sit in a hollow square. They face one another. There is no leader. So everybody takes a turn picking a song, and you pick the song, you are the leader, and then you have to give it up. That's democracy, hopefully. And then there's no musical accompaniment either. It's just our voices booming at each other and like singing to each other's faces. It it's supposed to be egalitarian. It's supposed to be easier to learn. I just like pretended to mouth. I pretended to sing the songs. I had no idea. But they're very open and welcoming, and that's a really nice thing about them. But that idea of like sitting in the hollow square and just having each other. Like there's nothing. We just have each other if we're gonna like make this sonically work or not, or it all falls apart. That part of the shape note history feels really a nice connection. Yeah.
I am struck too by this idea of the duration. You know, that your next work is sing to the point of exhaustion, or it takes 4 hours, or you're reading all night long. How I would love to just hear you talk a little bit about the importance of duration and perseverance, or how, as we kind of are out here thinking about listening to this, what is that for you?
I mean, thinking of like Christian doctrine, there's something about pain that makes the work worthwhile, that gives value to the work. That it has to undergo a certain amount of repetition at least to become sacred. It's like not the first time, but the third time, maybe it has transcended. that's one way to make something sacred. It's also some sort of necessity of labor and endurance and pain, physical pain, that feels like it transcends the work. Now that is in a lot of my early work. I want to move away from that. And so actually what I think this work is doing is transferring that onto other people. Like, oh, I'm done. Be uncomfortable singing it or listening to it and being frustrated by trying to hear my words and their words at the same time. Like, I want all of that. I want to give all of that frustration to someone else. Because I mean, it's still a valuable way. I just no longer want to be the one to endure it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'm very interested as well, probably many in this room, about how museums have often been compared to sort of sacred spaces. And sort of, I really think it's helpful and important that you just described or defined a little bit what could make something sacred. So, by you transferring that experience to the listener or the viewer, you are in effect creating a gateway to a kind of sacred experience of a work of art, conceivably. Would you agree? Other, so that's very powerful. Thank you. So I have to mention another layer right now. As you know, this installation is timed. It's been a kind of dawn to dusk experience, and with our time change, we were doing 6 to 6, and I think now, I don't know if we're 5 to 5 or 6 to 5, but we are hearing the music of North Forest Lights coming on. So it actually is a good moment. I mean, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. Do you all feel like you've asked the questions? And so I think with that, I would just say thank you for the opportunity to bring forth this work to create a kind of sacred space in our North Forest. And we're really excited to see where this experience takes your work and to follow that. So thank you, Bethany.